And the doctor said, look, if you don't start something, you're going to die.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. So everyone was different. Besides models or athletes, like I want to be better, this, that. Everyone was different. It was like, oh, wow, that's interesting because it gave me a different perspective because I was like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, no, it's be in health and shape, not like
everybody has the same thing. No, they
exactly.
don't. Yeah.
No, they don't. Exactly.
The idea behind the teaching thing is everything you're doing now, it just magnifies it, right?
Correct.
It magnifies your influence and your ability to help. And I know that that's on your heart. I can tell that you really do want to give back. And I hope you do the teaching thing because you're an amazing teacher and we need to get you in there.
And don't be afraid. To everyone out there in the audience, if you're going through something and you need a little help, don't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah.
All right. It's just that simple. Going because everyone's been in your situation, whatever it is. We, as a collective of people together, people want to generally help each other no matter what, which is a great feeling. And he was like my mentor, him and Father Desmond. He was the dean, and they were big guys, and they were just very, very down to earth. And they noticed when, kids didn't have, like myself, a father figure or direction, and so with their guidance, with coaches, everything else. And, I made mistakes, and I remember, hanging out the wrong crowd, and I never forget listening to guys or gentlemen who are basically going, hey, you don't want to be another product of society.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Oscar Smith, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about the amazing things that you're doing to help people sort of get their health back, right? And get their wellness in check. So thanks again for being here, bud.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on the show, and good morning to everybody out there from New York.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll start off really easy and actually yesterday was my birthday.
Hey, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I was born in Nassau County at Winthrop Hospital, and that is located in Westbury, Long Island in New York, and at 10:25 a.m. And basically, from there, growing up as a normal kid here in New York, during the end of the 60s to the 70s. A lot of things were different back then compared to now, where, there was a little bit of a racial tension as depicted in, let's say, West Side Story, because you had Spanish, you had Black, and then you had a little bit of Asian. So in schools, it was different. I went to public school, I went to Catholic school as well. And it was great because I was integrated in, seeing different, types of people, which is kind of cool. And that's what's nice about New York. We are a melting pot, and growing up here. So my mother, unfortunately, was in federal prison when I was a kid, and I wound up going, no, it's okay. It's all right. She made bad choices in her life, and alcohol and drugs and whatnot. And then I lived in foster care for a little bit. And then my grandmother came and got me out of foster care and basically became like our custodian for my brother and I.
That's awesome.
I tell everyone, look, I'm a product of the system, but the system works. Basically right from wrong. And if you do things and work hard, you get to where you are today. And I want to hear everyone complain or cry and make excuses and all that other stuff. And again, it's surrounding yourself with good people. So I found athletics as a great outlet, sports, and then meeting different kids. So from elementary school to high school, sports was my great outlet. And then my coaches. And I remember Father Joe when I went to Catholic school, and he was like my mentor, him and Father Desmond. He was the dean, and they were big guys, and they were just very, very down to earth. And they noticed when, kids didn't have, like myself, a father figure or direction, and so with their guidance, with coaches, everything else. And, I made mistakes, and I remember, hanging out the wrong crowd. And I never forget listening to guys who were, or gentlemen who are basically going, hey, you don't want to be another product of society. You want to do this, you want to do that. And it's your choice. And I never forget what he said, quote unquote, to this day, God bless him, Father Joe. He said, people aren't laughing with you. They're laughing at you because they're going to graduate high school and you're still going to be stuck here because you think it's cool to hang out with this crowd, whatever, and think about it. And that was my junior year. And I remember I quit sports. I was like, oh, I'm going to hang out with all the, the burnout crowd or whatever it is, the cool kids, stuff like that. And it was just, a huge rude awakening for me. And he knew my background and stuff like that. And next year I was like, okay, I'm running track and field. I'm playing football again. I'm going to school. And I went from basically a D student to a B student.
Awesome, dude.
Which is
awesome.
Exactly, which is great. And that's also when I noticed education is very important. And then the way you speak the Queen's good English, so to speak, like also like, yeah, yo, right. And standing up tall. And it was a point where at one time I was going to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, you know what? I can do that. But where's that going to take me? What am I going to do with, my clothes I have and my little apartment I have and stuff like that? And I didn't have anyone to take care of it. I didn't have any parents to look after me. So again, I tell everyone, you make choices in life, good or bad, own up to them. So I didn't go into the Marine Corps. I want to work in a bunch of part-time jobs and then getting into junior college. Because again, my transcripts weren't so great. My grades weren't so great. Yeah, they're great at the end of that 1 year, but they were like, what happened to this?
Yeah.
You went from a D to a B. Like, did they make a typo in your transcripts?
Right,
like, no. So with that, I wound up getting into junior college and then meeting other great people and, just, moving forward. And it was great because when you're with that wave of people, like we're going to go from here to here, they give you direction. I think that's a big problem with a lot of younger people. You don't have direction and you need to go and talk to people who are successful at that direction. Don't go with some guy who's like, I'm a YouTube sensation or Instagram or whatever it is. You have to think of what your capabilities are and what you can and cannot do, plus also what direction you want to go in. I was like, I'm sure everybody wants to be like a YouTube sensation or have a successful podcast. And I'm sure you get emails from people asking, hey, what can I do to get to your level? And you're being nice. Okay, reach out to me. I'll show you A, B, and C. And then they never contact you again. And then they blame you. And you're like, I asked you to help. I wanted to help you and this and that. And that's what I learned along the way in all my years. If you ask for help, you want to ask for help from someone who really means it, plus also someone who's going to put you in the right direction, not just give you a stall. And that's what I learned as working hard. And I remember I had odd jobs from a paper route to sweeping out stores, to shoveling walks, to bagging groceries, to washing dishes, loading trucks for UPS back in the day when I was in high school. That was exhausting, by the way.
Yeah.
Exhausting after school. But they paid $10 an hour back then. Right. It was like tons of money. Like, whoa, I was like rich. I get $100. We could say that now because back then $100 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. So, those jobs we had that got us along the way, I look back at them as learning experiences, not as anything like, oh, I hated that, this, and that, but it was a learning experience. And I tell everyone, there are two jobs I really loved. One was washing dishes at the Marriott Hotel. One, because I had my Walkman on, I would just do the dishes and everything else like that. And they would make me a cheeseburger, fries all the time at the cafeteria downstairs. And
they spoiled you.
Exactly. It was spoiled, but no one bothered me because no one wanted to come in the dish area because it was filthy. It was water. I had this plaid shirt on that they gave me in black pants with black shoes or sneakers on and a plastic apron. Yeah. And I had my music going, my Walkman, whatever. It was like the best job in the world because I got to do my homework. I did all the dishes and then I'll go down in the cafeteria and do my homework, my schoolwork and stuff like that. And it was great. It was like a great thing. The other job was lifeguarding. I became a lifeguard in '89, got the opportunity to be a beach lifeguard. And I did that for 16 years. And I love the camaraderie. I love meeting different people. I met guys who were going on to become pro surfers, to Olympic athletes, to other people who were going on to become administrators or teachers or doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. So it was a great basically outlet of meeting different people from all different backgrounds. But it also gave me like, oh, wow, I could do that. I could try that. I could do this as well. And again, bouncing things off each other. And then meeting Richie Wagner on the beach. He was a Nassau County cop, and he worked just the weekends. And he wound up sitting in a chair with me for that weekend, or my tower. And he said, "Hey, you would be a good cop." And I said, "I think you're great with how you work with people and stuff like that. You kind of do a thing." And it's like, if you hate it, you quit. So that's what made me go into law enforcement. And then, from there, it was just like, okay, this is great. Then getting into a specialized unit, then taking that background I had with physical fitness and health and whatnot, and then making that into a career by becoming a trainer. That was in 91 before I became a cop or anything like that. And I just did it part-time while I was going to school. And I tell everyone, look, school's hard. When you're paying for yourself, you take a semester off to make more money, then you go on. And the hardest thing is going back.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. Like, once you get in, like a majority of, like, I was talking to a lawyer. It was funny, a lawyer friend of mine. He was like, "Hey, remember when we worked at that club together?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." It was like, "Yeah, you were just going to law school." It was like, "Yeah." It was like, how we all had part-time jobs to pay for this, pay for that, and get us to where we are now. And that was the whole thing. Like, when I was doing the lifeguarding thing, I was working at a gym as a basically floor staff. I would wipe the stuff down, harder weights, and when people need a spotter, never thinking about being a trainer. Then someone said to me, like, "Hey, dude, I did always the closing shift. The same thing. I could do my homework at the desk when not, no one ever really bothered me. No one really needed a spot. If they did, they came over and grabbed me at this little fitness desk there. But this guy came over and said, "Hey, I noticed you're in really great shape." And I said, "Okay, yeah." And he was just like, "I want to do what you do." And I was like, "I don't understand." He's like, "You know what a personal trainer is?" And he explained it to me. He said, "I just want to shadow you when you come and work out. Can I just follow you along? And if you want, I'll pay you $20." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't even think about that." And I'm like, "All right, no problem." And that's how I got into the personal training business. Basically, just my physique and the way my attitude was. And then I wanted to learn more about the human body. So I took it the next from getting my bachelor's to getting my master's in, kinesiology, biomechanics, or exercise science. And then just learning as I go and keeping up on things. And, that's why I tell everyone: education, desire, have a dream. Don't be afraid to put them all together and just keep going, no matter what. And I tell everyone, like, if I can do it, anyone could do it. Again, it's just you're going to hit obstacles. And, think of that classic term of Bruce Lee: be like water. You go around the mountain, go over the mountain, go through the forest, everything's like that. You have to learn how to flow. And that's what everything, like, you're going to hit problems all the time. And it's for you to be able not to take it so emotionally or personally. Think logically. I always say, think like Spock from Star Trek. Logic. Okay, what do I need to do to get this? And I'm sure, like with you and, real estate and everything else like that, you're like, okay, you want a mortgage for a house that's $10 million, but you're only making $100.
Right.
Like, it is just not going to work at all. So maybe you want to down the line get that $10 million house, but now we're going to give you the $100 house. How about that? And then you can work. And then people are like, all right. And you see how quickly you progress your way up. Like you said, you make a plan for people to do so. And they look at it, they're going to listen to you or they're not. You're like, okay, but I'm just telling you what you need to do. And that's, I think, is a big thing where people, like we just had before, we started talking to people, just having a conversation, asking questions. That's very important. And that's what I learned when I was growing up, not to be afraid to ask questions. And again, trying to be that cool kid or whatever it is, stuff like that. It didn't work for me. I was a knucklehead. I was stupid. And, looking back on that, it was like, you know what? That taught me a very valuable lesson. Like, these guys, I remember who I was running around with, they're in jail.
Yeah.
They're still in jail to this day. They were career criminals, running around doing this, doing that, whatever it is. I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be.
Or where you want to end up. Yeah.
Correct. Or where I want to end up. Exactly. And, when I would run into them here and there when they were out of prison or whatever they were doing, and they're like, "Oh, wow, you're in college, you're doing this." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, it doesn't take much for you to go and do something better or better yourself. And that was a big thing for a lot of guys. Like, you control what you want to do. You cannot blame society. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame it. It's like, you have the ultimate say in what you want to do.
True.
So,
absolutely true. So I'll bet one of the running themes in this podcast is the power of questions. In fact, it's such a theme that I'm actually writing a book about the power of questions and how it's the bedrock of effective human communication, right? So I would be willing to bet that being a cop forced you to ask really good questions, right?
Correct.
Learn how to and stay curious, right?
Correct.
Because you never know what you're going to find.
Correct. Well,
When
that's the
you
other thing.
approach when you approach that person, you don't know. You don't know if they're a person of interest. You don't know if there's somebody that has something to hide. You don't know if there's somebody that has nothing to hide, but they can help you with a little bit of intel, right? Or a little bit of background and that kind of thing. It's like, so I'll bet that was a big, big thing in terms of helping you shape the way that you communicated with people and asking questions. Sounds like you probably already were there, but I love how you had all these mentors in your life. Those fathers, right? I mean, that was just cool, man. That they came along and did that. So, you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, no, not at all. But I'm going to go back real touch upon
Sure,
that.
sure. Go ahead.
The fathers, they saw that. They're like, here's this good kid
Yeah,
who has no direction.
yeah.
And them being priests, and it was interesting because I never knew priests as being so well educated.
Mhm.
Father Joe spoke 5 different languages
Yeah,
fluently, besides
yeah.
Latin, and I was like, all right. And then Father Desmond, he was a big guy. He was like 6'5", broad shoulder, everything like that. And when you had detention, he would play basketball with you in his full on priesthood garb,
Oh, the
yeah,
full, wow,
full on.
wow.
And that man can ball.
Yeah,
That man was definitely,
yeah,
and he would basically sit there. It was like, your dad talking to you. And that was kind of what, and he, that was his way of interacting and finding common ground. But like, we're not going to sit in a classroom. We're going to sit on the basketball court and we're going to shoot hoops. And then
yeah,
we're going to play one-on-one. And it was interesting because then he got to know you. And that helped me a lot of like not having a father figure instead of you looking at someone else from the bad neighborhood where you lived or someone else who was a knucklehead, whatnot, as a father figure. So that really helped me when I knew right away, because I didn't know anyone else, of that age to say,
yeah.
hey, would you mind taking me over? And I remember there was a big brother, big sister program also
Mhm.
back in the 70s, but didn't know about that at all. And how do you get into that or whatever it
Right.
is? That's part of foster care or social services, which
Mhm.
I didn't have any outlets to that. And you didn't want to deal with that. And, you had at that time also, where you as a young man were trying to figure out yourself. You're like, where do I fit in this? Where do I want to do? And again, we all look for reason why social media is so big. We all look for acceptance and the need
Yeah,
to belong. And that
yeah,
was a big thing they did years ago of interviewing for gang things. They're like, well, we took kids like me, how I grew up, and we gave them a family. The gang is a
mhm.
family. So
Yeah,
you need to belong and we'll protect you, we do all this stuff. And that's
mhm.
kind of a thing what these gangs did, even to this day, mafia or anything else like that,
Mhm.
organized crime, is like you made you belong to something. And it
Yeah.
was like, oh, cool. And you
And everybody
had,
wants to belong,
correct. Everybody
right?
wants to
Whether
belong.
it's good, bad, or indifferent, everybody
Correct.
wants to belong to something.
Correct. Absolutely. And that was all
Especially
that.
when you're in that age that you were in when you're a teenager and your
Mhm.
your 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 formative years and that kind of thing, right? And you had all kinds of things coming at you, right? And these priests stepped up and said, "Hey, talk to me.
Correct.
Let's
Exactly.
right." And one of the best things you can do with a kid is get their sweat pouring, right? Get them out, get them moving.
Correct.
It breaks down a bunch of the walls, is what I'm getting at, right? And so all of a sudden, it's like after you play one on one or a game of horse or whatever. All of a sudden, now you're just people. Now
Correct.
you're just having a conversation. You're regular guys, right? It's a different deal. It's just different. And they care enough to ask. And that's one of the reasons why I'm writing the book, because we don't ask questions anymore as much as we used to, right? And if you look
Correct.
at the people that are highly accomplished like you in their life, they understand the power of questions. They understand that you have to care enough to ask. And they also understand how to ask, right?
Correct.
It's a big, big deal. It's a big part of communication
Correct.
and,
But
and connecting, right?
it's also like with the fathers, what they did from their experience, they noticed that there's something off with me. They
Yeah.
said there's something going on that we want him to go this way and he's
Yeah.
trying to go that way, or he's not communicating. And it's just what you said, their experience and just talking to me.
Yeah.
And it was just like, again, it was just like a very humbling experience where they connected to me right away
Mhm.
and they knew exactly what was wrong and stuff like that. Go
And
ahead.
if you look closely enough, you can find it.
Yep.
You can see it. right?
Mhm.
Like I'm working with a young man right now who lost his dad 3 months ago. His dad was 52 and died suddenly. And he's mad at his dad. He's mad at the world. He's
Mhm.
really, really upset. And he's punching holes in walls and he's calling the police on his parents. And I mean, just you wouldn't believe all this stuff, right? And I ended up working with a friend of mine who's also a business partner. And I said, hey, you're going to have to sit with this kid. You're going to have to pull him out. You're going to have to sit, ask him questions, right? I even gave him a list of questions. He met with him 3 times, got nowhere. In fact, he felt like he was going backwards. So he invites me to dinner, and I go and have dinner with him, and I'm sitting with this kid across the table. And I start asking him questions. I was 3 questions in, and he goes, wait. And he looks at the other people at the table that love him, his godparents, his mom,
Mhm.
right? His brother. What is this? Why am I here? What is it? Almost like it's an ambush, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
like
like,
an intervention
yeah,
kind of
and
a
I'm
thing.
like,
Yeah.
look at me for a second. Look at me. I knew your dad. I was fond of your dad. And I know with every fiber of my being that your dad would want you to be happy. The only reason I'm here is to help you get to where you want to be so you're happy. So we need to figure that out, you and me. We need
Mhm.
to figure it out, right? He ended up exchanging phone numbers with me. Now we're meeting once a week. Okay. And he's putting together a plan to earn back his mom's trust and get
Mhm.
back to a place to where he can be where he thinks he'll be happy. You with me? And he's
Yep.
going to put together a contract. It's going to be a contract that he signs and his mother signs. I'm going to witness it. Okay. He's going to present the plan to his mother, and his mother's going to have carte blanche. She can change, take away, add to anything she wants. She has full control. But we reached him. You with me? And it
Yep.
came from that same thing that you're talking about. He's so angry, Oscar. He's just angry, like he's just mad at the world. And really, he's mad at his dad because his dad was sick for 4 weeks and his
Mhm.
dad never went to the doctor. And he knows that if his dad had gone to the doctor, he'd have a much better chance of being here right now. Okay. And we got to get to there. We got to get to where he expresses that anger and gets it out. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing you can tell. If you just watch, you can tell. They won't look at you. They're
Mhm.
angry. They've got this posture. They're right. But you can reach them. You just have to care enough to ask. And you have to
Yeah.
care enough to keep asking, right? Because teenagers do this.
Correct. Well,
Talk to the hand, right?
they're very defensive. They're
Yeah,
very
we
defensive right
call
away.
it the Heisman, okay? And
Yep.
it's because of all the things that have happened to them in their past, but it's also a learned behavior. They've learned it from their friends,
Mhm.
okay? From their classmates, from the people they watch. This is the cool thing to do. The
Yep.
worst thing you can do as a parent or an adult in their life that cares about them is throw up your hands and go whatever and walk out of the room.
Mhm.
You need to stand your ground. You need to get past this, right? And the only way you're going to get past this is you just keep asking because eventually they figure out that you're not going anywhere, right? And so now they have to answer. This is a desperate cry for help. You know that. You lived it,
Mhm.
okay? You absolutely lived it. It's a desperate cry for help, even though it looks on the surface like they don't want to talk to you and they won't talk to you. They're literally desperately asking for you to talk to them.
But it's just what you did is that you saw that already
Yeah.
and acted upon it. And that
Yeah.
was the whole thing. It's the same thing what the priest did. And my coaches are
Exactly.
like, okay,
Exactly.
we had guys like you before. We have
Yeah.
that experience. What do I need to do? And like I said, for Father Desmond, just that thing, like you said, and hey, look, talk to me, this and that.
Yeah.
Like you say, we're going to play basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not really good at basketball or whatever.
Right.
But again, he broke that glass with me,
Mhm.
broke that ground. He's like, I'm here to help you. And
Yeah.
I would go, and when I had problems or, adjusting or whatever it is, I would go to him or to Father Joe and say,
Right.
hey, can I get 5 minutes? They're like, I always have 5 minutes for you, Oscar. Come over and we'll walk to the rectory or walk down the hall on my way to school, to classes, whatnot. And he would give me that boost of confidence I
Yeah.
needed. And like same thing, like you saying to that kid, look, your mom's here, I'm here, everyone's here for you. We
Yeah.
want you to be happy. You tell us what we can do to help you become happy. And
Yeah.
it's
How
just
do
what you
we
said.
get there?
Correct.
Right.
It's what you said,
Yeah.
asking a question. So
Yeah.
when you become a detective in the police department, you go to basically detective school. And it's
Mhm.
just that who, what, where, and how. It's
Mhm.
like putting a puzzle together and you learn how to ask questions. And that's the way it is. It's like not a psychological thing, but it's more so just, you know, you sure it was 3 o'clock? the
Right.
time that you saw. So you sure they were wearing a gray sweatshirt? You sure, like they're like, well, I'm not too sure. I'm like, well, are you positive? And that's the whole
Yep.
thing. You're creating that seed of doubt. And
Yeah.
that's what I remember my law professor, Professor Pulling said. He's like,
Hmm.
are you absolutely sure, Oscar, that that is the criminal, or whatever it is, or whatever he said. And
Right.
I was like, and you doubt yourself?
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing, creating that seed of doubt. And that's
Yeah.
part of the questioning process of an investigation.
It
Are you
absolutely
really
is. You
sure?
ask
Yeah.
you ask piggyback questions,
Mhm.
right? You ask piggyback questions and you stay curious,
Mhm.
right? It's called active listening.
Correct.
Okay. We don't do that as much anymore. We need to do that more. That's why we're writing the book, because it needs to happen more. These types of conversations with people need to happen more, because if it does, we connect. You with me?
Yep.
We connect in ways that we aren't connecting right now. We're like this, right? As a
Mhm.
society, we're, right? So anyway, so let me ask you just a couple of questions, if I could,
Of
real quick,
course.
about your story. What was your favorite thing about growing up in Long Island?
The parks. There
Yeah.
was always people out playing in parks. We were always baseball tag, whatever. It was always something to do, which was great. Everyone was
That's
out, but
cool.
unfortunately, it was different because there's no phones.
Yeah.
That were back there. There was only channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 11, and 13 if you got it in, or
Right.
on your VHS. So
Right.
you didn't want to be inside. There was nothing to do. Plus,
Right.
board games were great also. In the
Yeah.
summer, you went and played board games with your friends and stuff like that. It was just the difference of us growing up back then. And,
Mhm.
I'm 59 now, is we enjoyed being outside
Yeah.
doing something, even if it's snowing, raining, whatever it is.
Mhm.
We were just being boys and girls
Mhm.
getting together, hanging out, like, okay. And then it was, ice skating,
Mhm.
local sport games, things like that. You went to places, you did things with your friends.
Yeah.
You had your group of friends and you were like a little gang and you went together,
Yeah.
to do this, to do that. And you had 1 or 2 friends who were just like, their parents were a little bit better off than you, or
Mhm.
the opposite. And you kind of learn that a little bit about different, structures and family households and whatnot,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So
Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today.
it was just that outside was the number one thing, being outside and always at the parks and playing.
That's so
Next
cool.
question.
What a great way to grow up, right? So, who was the most influential person to you growing up?
Uh,
I think I know that,
my
but
grandmother, actually. My
yeah.
grandmother, and she had these beautiful old photographs of her when in the 20s working at Macy's, or the 30s, I forgot when, just during showing me about the World War II, what happened,
Mhm.
and growing up here in New York. But she was a very church going woman,
Mhm.
Presbyterian, and just, I knew it was that classic thing. I never want to bring shame to her.
Yeah.
I never wanted the cops to bring me to the house and be like, we're going to tell you, grandma. Like, no, no, no. It's like the same
No.
thing. Like, you wanted to honor her like a samurai would honor their shogun.
Mhm.
And that's the whole thing. So she influenced me a lot of, stand up straight,
Yep.
learn how to cook a little bit, clean up after yourself, make your
Speak
bed,
correctly. Yeah.
exactly. Speak correctly. Like, don't slur your words, things like that.
Mhm.
Like, did you do your homework today? And just staying on top of me as best she could,
Yeah.
as, being a grandmother. And she's like, okay, let me try and take care of, like, I raised 2 daughters, as
Mhm.
she did. My mother was one of them in prison. My other aunt lived in the UK. It's
Mhm.
like, well, I have this young man. What do I do? I'm not how do I raise a boy? He's a kid,
Mhm.
as a guy, how do I connect to him? Stuff like that, especially when I became a teenager,
Mhm.
you know, and, she had a huge influence on me. That's
Yeah.
all. Just,
That's so
her
cool.
honor, basically just saying that, I don't want to ever be disrespectful to anyone older, but she taught me
Mhm.
that, how to be a gentleman, how to
Yeah.
treat a lady, how to be, courteous and stuff like that. Just, it was like all her upbringing, just
Yeah.
simple things.
Old world stuff, man.
Correct.
Big time.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
awesome. I love it. Shout out to grandma.
Oh yeah.
So In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I liked, believe it or not, I liked science.
Yeah.
But science was back then was a bit of everything.
Yeah.
So it was astronomy mixed in with what was it, geology, and then how plants grew and all that
Yeah.
other stuff. So I kind of
Horticulture,
liked
all
it.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And or botany,
Yeah.
as I would say.
Yeah.
But the problem is that I wasn't one to sit and read a book.
Yeah.
I'd rather be outside doing things, but I
Right.
love science. I love that. And that kind of was wanting me to fuel my brain
Yeah.
on, like, I want to learn things. What else do I need to learn? I also loved history. I
Cool.
love Roman history,
Mhm.
Greek history, the history of the Egyptians, stuff like that. It was kind of, and again, in high school, you touch upon a bit about those subjects. And
Yeah.
I always wanted to go there. I had dreams of going around the world, seeing things with my own eyes, which I've done, which is great that I accomplished that, seeing
Mhm.
so many things around the world with my own eyes and
Yeah.
traveling, with my wife and all. And it's great because it's a huge accomplishment to me when I get to tell people, oh no, I've been there. I did that. Go see this place, go here,
Mhm.
or places that I really like to go back and forth to. One was in Brazil, another one's Morocco. Um, I love Bali as well. Places where you became not an authority, but it's like your own backyard.
Yeah.
You're like, I've been there 5 or 6 times or 7 times, or whatever it is. And it's
Cool,
still
man.
exploring the country. And that's the whole thing. Like, I was just telling somebody when Indiana Jones came out, that movie,
Mhm.
the first one, every kid wanted to be a geologist.
Yeah.
It was just like, wow, that's so cool. Like finding things, whatever it is. And it was like, no, like maybe I could have been a geologist if I had a direction or someone to say, okay, you have to go to school, you have to do this, do this, do this. And then it can go on and do that. Like, oh my God, I'm working at the ancient Egyptian pyramids or something like that,
Mhm.
or I'm pulling up Greek statues, or I'm in the middle of the desert somewhere, or getting dinosaur bones, off
Oh,
a cliff
cool.
somewhere. Yeah, exactly. So that's a whole thing where I believe direction is a key thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's just knowing what direction to go in. And what you said, like with that young man, putting a plan together
Yeah.
to get to that goal.
Yeah.
And that was a great line from an NFL coach. He said, a goal without a plan is nothing but a wish.
Yeah.
And it was just true. It's just like
Kind
everyone
of a
wishes to be
dream.
successful. Correct.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to put it all together.
Yeah. And it's, goals without action are nothing, right?
Correct.
It's like, see ya, right? Okay. So you end up going to community college and you end up getting your bachelor's degree at some point, right?
Correct.
Where did you go to get that?
I went to Queens College.
Okay.
So I stayed local.
And what was your major?
My major was basically phys ed, physical
Okay.
education.
Cool.
So,
And
I still,
then you went to law school.
well, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I
Okay.
wound up clerking at a law office and realizing
Okay.
how boring it is.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it was so boring.
So
I
no
was
law
on this,
school.
I was on the
got you.
softball team and everything
Yeah.
else for the law office and whatnot, and they were really nice.
Yeah.
And it was just like talking to the lawyer guys, and the
Yeah.
secretaries wouldn't talk to you, whatever it is. You were just like the mail person, whatever.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I just thought of like, this is the most boringest job in the world. And that's when I ran into a friend who was a lifeguard on the beach. And so
Yeah.
I had a job in the summer at clerking at this law. I had my terrible tie and my suit jacket on and my like baggy jeans, whatever I had. And that was my job, was citing cases, pulling cases, cleaning the law library, pulling the books out, whatever it is, sending them
Yeah.
over to the law office. Basically I was like a gopher,
Right.
to them. But they're like, oh, this is how you learn.
Yeah.
And then they would have their softball game like every Friday night or whatever it is at Eisenhower Park. And the guys would have their beers or whatever it is and stuff like that. And I was like, my God, this is so boring. And these guys were all non-athletes. They were all non-athletes at all, basically running to the base was like them, just crawling. I'm like,
Right.
dude, aren't you guys going to play? They're like, oh, I'm not done with my beer yet, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
this is the most boringest thing. And I'm like, is this their lives? I'm like, oh, and that's all they did when they pulled you aside. They were like, oh, dude, my wife, I can't stand her or whatever.
Oh, my
You're like,
gosh.
I can't. You're just like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
So
I don't
that's
want
when
this life.
exactly. And that's when I ran into a lifeguard friend of mine. He said, you should try out and be a lifeguard, for the summer.
So you're a lifeguard for 16 years.
Yes.
This is impressive, right? This is cool.
Yep.
What's the single most important thing you learned being a lifeguard?
dealing with the public is not as easy as you would think it would be.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that was, you can't please everybody. And also, like you said, asking questions. For me being a younger guy, right away, you think strength will go and do the whole thing. It just escalates things to a bad direction, which I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But there is, a whole thing where people do, look at you as in like, if I do, something happens to me, I know you're going to come rescue me. And that was a nice feeling when people would say that to me, because I was in really great shape. And they were like, with the guys on my tower or team or my crew, as we say, the lifeguarding crew, we're all athletic. So they knew right away. They're like, wow, those, young men, young women were like, they're right on point. And plus also I have to say Baywatch just came out and it was huge. So Baywatch did not at all hurt anything of being a lifeguard. Like every girl wanted to be a lifeguard.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. That wasn't a bad thing.
It wasn't a bad thing at all. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be like, okay. And it definitely helped a lot. And it made a lot of guys also jealous that like, oh, he's the lifeguard. They're like, they put you down all the time to sing the lifeguard song or whatever it is. You're like, okay, whatever. People are just jealous.
Yeah. But, well, it happens. It goes with the territory. And it goes with working with the public, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So you make a decision to join is it NYPD?
Yes, the NYPD.
Okay. So you make a decision to join NYPD. You were there how long?
15 and a half years.
Okay. So you're there for 15 and a half years. You make detective, right? So you had a really cool career there. What's the number one thing when you're looking back, what's the number one thing you learned being a beat cop and then also a detective?
No matter what, the powers that be will basically, the municipality or how the NYPD, like any civil service job, there's, a top tier level or, it's basically, the chiefs, the sergeant, everyone else makes decisions and it rolls down. And you're at the bottom of that so-called command list. And where you think that this is the right thing to do and they tell you no, and you have no say in it whatsoever. And that kind of like it's kind of disheartening because you look at people, they make mistakes and you're like, okay, and they'll give you a word like, I won't see you again or whatever it is, don't do this again. And they force you where you have no choice but to incarcerate them.
Yeah.
Like they made a big mistake. They realized they made a mistake. They got caught, whatever it is. You're never going to see them again. You put them down this way, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to be right away. You just justified that. Oh, the system did this to me, whatever it is, especially the younger generation. And that was the thing where you had the ability to talk to people to say, look, this is a dead end street you're going in. Let's do it this way. Once you try this instead, there are other ways you can go. And I remember, working in the projects where kids had no opportunities and then telling them, go to the local store there, see if he needs a stock person or someone to clean up or whatever it is. So you can make a little bit of money instead of being here with the bad guys.
Do something productive, right?
Exactly. For yourself.
Yeah.
Because eventually you're going to end up in jail.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I never forget, I took these two boys and they were about 16 and I knew the athletic director for Nassau Community College, where I went to my junior college. I stayed in touch with them because at that time, before I became a police officer, I was a phys ed teacher.
Yeah.
So I would substitute for Professor Linda Quintoni at Nassau Community College when she was out. So I got in with some of the people there, which was nice. So I took these two boys who were basketball players. And remember, I was a terrible basketball player. I wasn't exactly very tall. And Father Desmond just, basically always beat me like at least by 10 points.
Yeah. That's why you always had to play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And plus also it's funny because instead of going to detention, I would go and just after school, wait for the late bus when I didn't have practice or anything like that and play basketball with them. And that was my way of like that fatherly son time to talk.
Yeah. Seeking that connection. Yeah,
exactly. Which I needed. And I saw it right away. I needed it, just like how this young boy is saying, okay, I want to talk to this guy. I need this connection.
Yeah.
Maybe I see, my dad in him, things like that. Right away, you picked on that. So,
and a lot of people have said that, by the way. A lot of people have said that I'm a lot like his dad.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like my energy, that kind of thing. And so but it really was the questions. It really was the fact that I was willing to stand my ground because this is a kid that wanted to push back. He wanted to push back, and I wasn't going to allow that. I've got a 26 and 24-year-old I lived through their, survived their teenage years, right?
Mhm.
I've been there and done that. So yeah, but it's important. I think it's incredibly. So one of the things we've been talking about in this podcast a lot, because we're talking with a lot of people like you who are highly accomplished in what they do, like they have achieved great things in their lives. It's a big deal for those of us who have had mentors in the past, like Father Joe, right? Father Desmond, okay? It's incredibly important, I believe, that we pay it forward. If we spot somebody who's younger that's going in the wrong direction, we need to jump in and help. We may not have the time, okay? But in honor of those people, in honor of the people who have helped me in my life and the people who have helped you in your life, we need to pay it forward.
Correct. I
Okay?
agree with you.
Yeah, and so that's something I want people to hear. I want them to understand this is something about being an adult, and it's something about being a leader in society. When you've accomplished greatly, what's given to you greatly is asked of you greatly, right? This is our role. It's what we should be doing. So I
But
just feel like it's important that we talk about that. So
correct.
so
But
go ahead. I didn't mean to
that's the
interrupt you.
no, it's all right. That's the point of the story.
Yeah.
So these two young men, I said, "Hey, you guys are good basketball
Mhm.
players. What's your goal?" Of course, I want to play in the NBA. And I said, "Well, you know what? I know the head of the basketball team at Nassau Community College.
Mhm.
Let's get you guys enrolled in school,
Yeah.
and then we can go and we can meet with the head coach, and then he can give you a tryout.
Mhm.
And here's an ability for you guys to go and play on a collegiate level,
Mhm.
plus get an education." And just what you said, what was granted to me by Father Joe and other people who mentored me, here I am taking these two young men and
Yeah.
saying the same thing because I know them because I locked them up for distributing, marijuana or weed.
Mhm.
And I said, look, back then it was 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're already in strike one. You're going to go for strike two because I know you're going to go back to this thing. And I know you guys need money. You live in the projects. I totally understand it. So I grew up the same way. I
Yeah.
nothing or everything else, no father figure. And I said to them, I'll meet you guys here on this day and time. I'll pick you up, drive you to Nassau Community College. We'll figure out how you guys get there by public bus or whatever it is. We figure it out and stuff like that. They didn't show up.
Yeah.
They didn't show up. I don't know what happened to them. They weren't in the neighborhood anymore. They just, whether they were avoiding me or whatever. I'm like, okay. And to this day, I have no idea what happened to them,
Mm.
but they just basically bailed. And I asked around the neighborhood, they're like, oh no, they moved or whatever it is. And their grandmother still lived there because they grew up with their grandmother, same thing, similar to what I went through.
Yeah.
And I saw that. And I was talking with them. And like when you get people on their own and they
Mhm.
put down, like you said, the Heisman Trophy
Mhm.
thing, they open up.
Yeah.
They come no kid, male or female, does not want direction.
Yeah.
It's like a classic line out of the movie Indecent Proposal,
Yeah.
where the architect goes, even a brick wants to be something. And he's
Mhm.
showing the Taj Mahal, so the Taj Mahal, he's showing the
Mhm.
Empire State Building. It's like, even a brick wants to be something. You
Mhm.
can create something out of this brick.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Like with every there was I think an ad back then in the 80s. Remember, a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Yeah.
I forgot what commercial that was for, but that was a whole thing where these kids, they wanted to move on. It's like, I don't want to be stuck in this cycle again. I want to get into an education. I said, if I can do it, you can do it. Because
Yeah.
after Queens College, then I went to Hofstra to get my master's. I said
Mhm.
I wanted to continue my education, go on, and eventually I said I wanted to be a college professor, which I'm kind of steering towards right now. And like
Right.
I did everything I wanted to do. I'm going to go back and, like you said, give back to
Yeah.
what was given to me as
Yeah.
best I can.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing where, again, like you said, asking questions, trying to get answers, trying to help people follow along. And I didn't learn about questions until, you know, people ask me, have any questions? Like we said, do you have any
Yeah.
questions? Like when you first, spoke to me, you were like,
Right.
I'm like, no, not at all. Not at this time. But it's no reason why anytime during the dialogue that you don't ask questions. Like
Yeah.
we're nervous. Like, I don't want to say anything wrong or anything
Right.
offensive or whatever it is. And that's the whole thing. We're like, I want you to share. I
Yeah.
want you to be okay. And that's those discussion groups you have with, like, they're drug addicts or whatever it
Mhm.
is, or people who are down or out. When they have those groups, they're like, you want to share with us. And that's
Yeah.
the same thing, like opening up for questions,
Yeah.
and with no judgments, and that's the whole thing. Like a professor of mine said a long time, there's no such a thing as a stupid question,
Yeah.
ever. And
Well, the
we know
stupid
that term.
question is the one you don't ask, that you
Correct.
have and you don't
Correct.
ask, right?
Correct.
So that's one of the things that I told this kid. I said, listen, there is no judgment here. It doesn't matter what you say to me. I'm not going to judge you.
Mhm.
Okay. So open up. Tell me what's going on. I want the good, bad, and the ugly. Okay. I'm not looking for the sanitized version. I'm not looking for what you think is the politically correct answer. I'm looking for what's going on inside you. I want to know how you feel. And I want you to feel comfortable sharing that with me. So you end up open. And by the way, real quick, I hope you do this. I hope you go and teach. You are such an amazing bright light, and you can lead so many people and do so much good in this world by doing that. I hope you do that. I really do.
I
And
will.
I
I'll
would I
see.
would love for you to do that.
Thank you so much. But I see that. But that's the same thing. Like, we are made into mentors.
Yeah.
And like taking my experience to make me into a mentor, if I can help someone move
Yeah.
forward. And that was my thing I saw with health and fitness and the aspect of mental health, not just physical or, dietitian or nutrition, things like that.
Yeah.
Putting it all together for someone to say, hey, you know what? I had diabetes. I
Mhm.
had, clogged arteries. I had also exactly. And like, what did I do to change that?
Yeah.
I had someone guide me along and say, okay, give me a routine, give me a diet to do, stuff like that. And I feel good. Now I play pickleball, let's just say.
Yeah.
You want to hear stories like that. I'm athletic now. I can run around with my kids without
Mhm.
feeling my heart's going to fall out of my chest.
Right.
And especially as older adults, we have to take care of ourselves
Yeah.
because, God, I'm so sorry for the young man's loss, 52.
Yeah.
That's a very young age for someone to die. It's like, all
Kind
right,
of.
and
And I'm
it's a big thing.
58, right? It hit
I know.
me like a ton of bricks,
Yep,
you know?
exactly. I mean, you see in the news, like so and so passed away, or this one
Mhm.
passed away. Like, my God, there's like Louis Gossett Jr. just died. I remember
Yeah.
a few months ago. You're like, dude, he was healthy. I thought of that. I was like, and all the ailments, like no one really knew. Remember the actor Michael Duncan Clark,
Yeah.
the big guy,
Yeah.
from the
Big guy.
Green
Yeah.
Mile, right?
Yep.
No one knew he had heart problems and he died in the hospital. And it was 2 weeks after that they announced that he died. They kept
Wow.
it hidden, everything. And I was like, oh, and the guy was healthy as a horse. But they
Yeah.
said, from whatever reason, his heart gave out, whether it was steroid use or whatever it is, or something like that. But, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, and, with most guys and girls, excuse me, leading by example, that's the key
Yeah.
thing. And I said, you want to be healthy, you want to be positive, you want to be, and that's my thing. Like on LinkedIn, I go, my motivational 15-second motivation thing every morning I do for
Love those,
everyone.
by the way.
Yep.
Love
Thank
those.
you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I was like, 3 pieces of success:
Mhm.
positive, perseverance, and professionalism. That's all
Mhm.
you need. Whatever business you're in, just stay positive, professional. And, it's just a little thing of patience. I sell some
Mhm.
people in there besides persevere. If you're growing a
Mhm.
business, persevere. But if you have a business, you got to learn to be patient. And I
Yeah.
said that's the other P that goes in. So they both go together. Instead of
Yeah.
4, I just made it 3.
No, I got you. I got you. It's
So,
cool, man. It's cool.
yeah,
I love that you do that, by the way.
yeah.
And I hope people will go and connect with you on LinkedIn. That's a big deal. So you made a decision to start this studio and change people's lives. What's the single most important thing that you learned doing that?
Everyone's different. Like everyone
Yeah.
has different goals. It was
Yeah.
kind of wild. It's not aesthetics or health wise. Some people it was for, I need to go to this gala event and I need to
Yeah.
fit in this dress. Or
Yeah.
for some guys is that, I was always out of shape and I just want to be
Mhm.
in better shape, or I have health issues. And the
Yeah.
doctor said, look, if you don't start something, you're going to die.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. So everyone was different. Besides models or athletes, like I want to be better, this, that. Everyone was different. It was like, oh, wow, that's interesting because it gave me a different perspective because I was like this. It was
Mhm.
like, oh, no, it's be in health and shape,
Yeah.
not like
Everybody
it's for
has the
this.
same thing. No, they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, they don't. Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
where I learned. I was like, oh, interesting. And that's when I had to apply questions.
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you like? What kind of ailments do you have? And that was a
Mhm.
whole thing going to the basically medical side of it. You
Mhm.
know, do you get a checkup every year? Do you do
Mhm.
this, whatever? And following up with them. And they're like, oh, yeah, I do this. And, clients started to relate more to that as a personal level. Like, wow, he's not just my trainer. He's
Mhm.
also like my confidant, my friend.
A
I get,
holistic approach.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the whole
Yeah.
thing. And
And
like,
that's
how you,
exactly how you're built, man. I mean, I love what you've done and I love what you're doing, and I hope you keep doing it. The idea behind the teaching thing is everything you're doing now, it just magnifies it, right?
Correct.
It
Exactly.
magnifies your influence and your ability to help. And I know that that's on your heart. I can tell that you really do want to give back. And I hope you do the teaching thing, because you're an amazing teacher, and we need to get you in there, right? We need to get you to where you're having that kind of impact on that number of people, because it just multiplies it. So
Correct.
I just think it'd be awesome.
Well, it's
Listen,
the same thing. Same
is
thing
there
like
any,
with you.
yeah, is there
Oh,
anything
go.
you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
No, nothing at all. Just, everyone be patient with other people.
How
Stay
can people
positive.
reach you?
You can reach me at www.o-dstudiogroup.com. Or if you want to get a little insight on more of my background, I wrote a book called Natural Strength that is out on Amazon.
There you go.
You got it on paperback and an ebook. I'll send you the links to all that or whatever else you need.
Love it.
And
Love
then
it. We'll put it in the description for you.
And anyone who wants to reach out to me and just have some questions, please, by all means. You get me. You don't get an assistant or things like that. I'll be more than happy. And I tell everyone, what you just said, you share ideas and things with people. It helps open up and create new ideas.
Yeah.
And maybe even find solutions to problems that you have.
Yeah.
And we all do that. We all go through problems.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid.
True, man.
And don't be afraid. Everyone out there in the audience, if you're going through something and you need a little help, don't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah.
All right. It's just that simple. Going, because everyone's been in your situation, whatever it is. We, as a collective of people together, people want to generally help each other no matter what, which is a great feeling. And keep that in mind, that what you're going through, someone else could be going through. And
or has gone through, right?
Or has,
and they can help you.
Correct. Exactly.
People suffer in silence too much.
Oh yeah. That's a big
Absolutely
problem.
too much. Just ask. Just ask.
No,
People will help.
But congratulations to you and the podcast show. I want you the most success ever. Wishing you the best success, and also becoming an author.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much, Oscar, for being here. Thank you for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience.
No, thank you so much again. All right.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.